Hello, beautiful people. This is Reverend Bonnie. Welcome to Spiritual Center Spokane. I am so glad to see you tonight. Tonight is Tuesday, July the 15th, 2025, and it is my pleasure to be here with you. If you like what you hear, please comment, please subscribe, and share with friends. And check out our website, which is spiritualcenterspokane.org. There you can sign up to get our email every week, and you can read the blog that's called Worth Contemplating. It is my pleasure to be here with you tonight. I think tonight is going to be a relatively short one and a very powerful one. So I have often said that the Holy Spirit, that the life force of God that speaks to us, speaks through us, that speaks to us symbolically, is always present. And that one of the many ways it communicates with us is through curiosity. What I'm interested in today, you may or may not be interested in today. Something is pulling you from the inside if you're quiet enough to listen. And so, what is pulling me from the inside right now is looking at where I am in my life right now versus when I was younger, or looking at stages and phases of my life and of others' lives, or looking at the maturation process and how I've matured emotionally or spiritually, and having a gratitude and an appreciation and an awareness of how we as human beings unfold if we allow ourselves to stay pliable enough and to listen and to take in the input of spirit and to respond. So it's that co-creation, even though co sounds like there's two separate things and we are not separate from spirit. However, there's a give and a take, a flow and in and an out, an awareness and an implementation. There's a whole dual thing that happens amidst the oneness that we are. And so I wanted to talk a bit about my curiosity around this awareness that I'm having. And it started several weeks ago when I was watching the current HBO program, and Just Like That. And Just Like That has 3 seasons. It's in season 3, and it is the mature half, or the second following of the women from Sex and the City. So when I was in my 30s, Sex and the City was a popular and very edgy, very risque kind of a show, which now when we look at it isn't. Like, I mean, it was very, very cutting edge, on the edge. And it was about 4 different women who were really close friends who lived in New York City, and they shared a life together. They were a community for each other. And it was very 30 something, where their interest was in shoes and fashion and men and relationships and work and empowerment. And when this came out, it was on the very cutting edge because it was still acceptable for women to not be paid well and not have high ranking positions. And so these women were breaking traditions, and including in the area of sexuality, that they were not apologetic for being sexual beings, which in 1989, when it came out, was still pretty scandalous. And of course, today, one of the things I'm very grateful for today is a lot of the shame that my generation grew up with around sexuality doesn't seem to be operating as fully, or it's showing up in a different way and is less damaging to women, and I like that. So, anyway, I've been watching and just like that, and there was this one scene, and I wrote about this on the blog. There was this one scene where Carrie, the main character, is dating this man who she actually dated in Sex and the City, and they were serious in Sex and the City, and then they're serious now. And what his name's Aiden, and Aiden got married in the last, let's see, what, 89, in the last 30 years or so. Aiden got married, had kids, and one of his kids has some behavioral problems. And so they live apart. Carrie's in the city, he's in the country, and Aiden co-parents with his wife, Kathy. So Aiden came to visit Carrie, and it was weird energy between the two of them, and it was very clumsy. And what ended up coming out of Aiden's mouth was that there was a really rough moment with their son, and he slept with his ex-wife, Kathy. Now, all of this was resolved in less than 2 minutes, and I was floored and grateful. So what happened is Carrie said, "You know what? I could see that. I really understand. I get how you had a rough day with the son you shared, and you ended up sleeping together." And she said, "Do you still want a relationship with me?" And he's like, "Absolutely. I love you. This was a mistake." And she goes, "All right." Well, and then they had a conversation about monogamy, and it just wasn't a deal. And what I realized in that scene was that had it been 30 years earlier, when she was 30 years old, had he had an affair on her, the relationship would be over. In fact, she had slept with an ex-boyfriend in Sex and the City, and he left her. The relationship was over. And that is because at the age of 30, the big, huge perspective of life and traveling life with a partner and the ups and the downs and what that looks like and how much grace and forgiveness is provided and all of that jazz. And again, I'm not telling anyone or even suggesting that someone go have an affair. But what I'm trying to say is that I was able at that moment to reflect back to my 30s and reflect back to the original Sex and the City series and say, "Isn't that interesting? A behavior that would have happened 30 years prior is being acted out 30 years later with a vastly and very different response." And I found that curious and I found that interesting. And I started in my contemplations looking at where I had grown spiritually and where I had provided a lot more grace in my life. One of the areas is that I really get that my life is my life and your life is your life, and you're the boss of your life, and I'm the boss of my life. And so, what's right for me might not be right for you. And so, I don't have the opinion on how somebody else ought to live their life because I've lived long enough and I have enough spiritual maturity and depth to understand that I am not that person in their circumstances, in their consciousness, in their situation. And so for me to make a call for their life is crazy. So I know Mel Robbins came out with a book recently called Let Them, which is basically let other people live their life and don't meddle in it. And Byron Katie came out with a book a long time ago. Um, Boy, what was that called? I don't remember, but she said in there that there's your business, my business, and God's business, and it's important not to mix them up. And that has been something ever since I read that I have adhered to. And then Cole Whitaker wrote a book called Terry Cole Whitaker, What you think about me is none of my business. And she wrote that in the 70s. So it's been a long held thought or realization as you spiritually mature that you are responsible for you. I am responsible for me. And our relationship with spirit is between ourself and spirit to which we're accountable. And so that's really beautiful. Well, that all got me into purchasing this book by Father Richard Rohr, who's a Catholic priest and whose work tends to be deep and beautiful. And it's called Falling Upward. And it's about, he sees two different distinct life phases. Now, of course, having studied and worked with as many people as I have a level of consciousness understanding that is many, many, many stages deep. And that's what I look at and through. But I am on a curiosity bender. And so I'm following where the crumbs are leading me. So with Richard Rohr's Falling Upward, on page 5, he says, it was Carl Jung who first popularized the phrase, the two halves of life, to describe these two major tangents and tasks. Yet many other teachers have recognized that there are clear stages and steps to human and spiritual maturation. Process language is not new, it has just used different images. There are the foundational journey of Abraham and Sarah, the exodus of Moses, Mohammed's several key flights, Jesus's four kinds of soil, images of the way of the cross on the walls of churches, John of the Ladder, the recurring schemas of Saint Bonaventure, John of the Cross, Teresa of Avila, and in the modern era, Jean Piaget, James Fowler, Lawrence Kohlberg, Claire Graves, Jean Gebser, Abraham Maslow, Eric Erickson, Ken Wilber, Carol Gilligan, Daniel Levinson, Bill Plotkin, and an entire world of spiral dynamics. They all affirm that growth and development have a direction and are not a static grit your teeth and bear it. Unless you can chart and encourage both movement and direction, you have no way to name maturity or immaturity. Most of these teachers, each in their own way, seem to coalesce around two key insights that continue to show themselves in almost every one of these constructs. First, you can only see and understand the earlier stages from the wider perspective of the later stages. And that is true, and that is really, really key. This is why mature societies were meant to be led by elders, seniors, saints, and the initiated. They alone are in a position to be true leaders in a society, or certainly in any spiritual organization. I could not have said that better. The second insight about steps and stages is that from your own level of development, you can only stretch yourself to comprehend people just a bit beyond yourself. Some theorists say you cannot stretch more than one step above your own level of consciousness, and that is on a good day. Because of this limitation, those at a deeper or a higher level beyond you invariably appear to be wrong, sinful, heretical, dangerous, or even worthy of elimination. Oh my God, I so completely understand that. So we start with someone who's fundamental, and in a fundamental mindset, everything is black and white and right and wrong, and you're in or you're out, and it is very severe. And as we mature emotionally and as we mature spiritually, we start entering into fields of gray. And we start to see that everything is both a yes and a no. That yes and a no exists in wholeness. And we choose one directional way by following a yes or following a no. So So it is often the fundamentalist that takes down the bigger thinker. And Einstein said something about that. He said something about the smaller mind wanting to slay the bigger consciousness because that's the way it works. The people who are right and who know, and there's only one way and it's their way, are the least mature of all people because they can't see a big scope. They can't see a big picture. And without that scope and without that picture, there is no choice. So, Reverend Michael Beckwith, who I love, says all the time that choice is an aspect of awareness. As soon as we become aware, then we have choices. When we're not aware, we are driven by the narrow mindedness of our internal self, which is immature. And so, what Richard Rohr says in his book is that there's two halves of life, and the first half is constructing our container for our personality to be within and to grow and to develop. And there's that famous quote in the Bible where Jesus says that you must die to yourself in order to be born again. But the deal is you have to have a self to die to. So the whole first half of life is creating this container, and now I am keenly aware that some people were born awakened. I have no doubt about that whatsoever. And I also know, like prodigies, that some people awoke early. And I also know that with near death experiences, that there's an instantaneous awareness that doesn't necessarily exist when we are going through that maturation process in the more slow, step by step way. But in that, we're building the container of the personality, and that at some point we release the personality for the spirit. So there's the human and then there's the divine. And in our younger, least aware time, we're very human oriented. And as we get older, we're more spirit oriented or divine oriented if we're allowing our soul to unfold and to express itself. So, what Richard Rohr says in his book is the first half is like Newtonian thinking. It's black and white, it's linear, there's a lack of complexity. And then the second half of life is more quantum like in nature, where there's a lot more mystery involved, where there's an inter and an interconnectedness, where relationship is important, and where we don't do linear, we do more of the spiral, we do more of the circles, we do more of the waves than something solid and linear. And the what I saw in the contrast between the show was really maturation into grace. And so when we're younger spiritually, it's all about the law, and it's about, did we follow the rules and were we a good Christian or a good Jew or a good Hindu or a good whatever we are. And then it goes from being about the law to being about the spirit, to being about the love. Boy, I tell you, once your heart gets open and you are tapped into love, it's all about the love. That that fitting into the law, there isn't an attraction for that any longer. There's an awareness of it. I mean, we're all aware of laws. There's an awareness of it, but it isn't the driving force behind what gets us up in the morning and has us live our life. So then I picked up this book, The Fifth Season by Mark Nepo, and I'm hoping to get a lot further in these books so I could share more with you. Because, like I said, this has just been a really fun uplifter for me. And let's see, he says here, all right, a compelling metaphor for the inevitable process of aging is how a meteor enters the Earth's atmosphere. Consider that the more a meteor burns up, the brighter it gets. As it enters the atmosphere, more and more of it burns away and flakes off until there is only light. What a great metaphor. This seems to be our journey as a spirit in a body over a lifetime. As we hurtle through the years, we are worn of all that doesn't matter. As experience wears us down and burns us up, we grow brighter. Isn't that beautiful? And I wanna say that's not automatic, at least it's not for me. It's an active process of choosing the light over smallness, resentment, darkness, etcetera. Until at death, we are all light. And so, by its very nature, the second half of life is integrative in a way that discards all that is not essential if we don't resist it. Ultimately, if faced tenderly and truthfully, aging is, as Helen Luke describes, a journey into simplicity. This feels somewhat familiar to me because being a poet and a cancer survivor, I've spent a lifetime looking for the simple seams of life that reveal what is essential and enduring. To be clear, the goal in facing aging is not to beat it or duck it or run from it or even reframe it or minimize it. The goal in facing aging is to live more fully the closer we get to death, so we can die with no feeling left unfelt and no voice of life left unheard and no thing in the world left unloved. Oh my goodness, I say yes to that. No thing in the world left unloved. So in the first book I read with Richard Rohr, and he's talking about the first part of life, he talks a lot about, now he's a man, and he talks a lot about how men have been raised in a way that unless they go through a maturity process, they can become very entitled. And he said many men have never heard the word no. And I took my highlighter pen and I underlined that like nobody's business. The biggest surprise that I have had as a minister of a church is saying no to white men 50 years old and above who have never been told no in their life. And I didn't think that existed, but it does. And to be the first person to tell a man no is something else. And and it was a real eye opener to me because the company I keep has tended to have a larger consciousness. And so part of the maturation process is being able to be on one end or another of conflict and still love the person who stands in front of you without making them wrong, being able to have self introspection, self awareness, and be able to, in receiving feedback that you don't like, being able to take that and use it as fertilizer for something greater. That is emotional and spiritual maturity. And I was very, very surprised to see and to learn that that is has not been a steady for all of humanity. And that has been an interesting wake up to me. And I found that very curious that Richard Rohr wrote about that in his book. And yeah, yeah, it's a good book, and I look forward to finishing it and then having more conversation with you. When I read Mark Nepo's Place about maturation being looking at what's essential in your life, it had me think of our time in COVID. And I think one of the most beautiful things about our COVID experience, and I know it wasn't beautiful for everyone, and I also know how hard it was for all of us collectively, that at least the clients that I worked with during COVID all asked themselves a question, what is essential? We talked about essentials a lot, and mostly essentials had to do with physical things like toilet paper, like eggs, like, um, rubbing alcohol, like yeast, like what is essential, but it also had to do with who were our essential people that we potted with. And it had to do with what is essential as far as how we invested our time. And so when I think that aging is a lot of asking what is essential and then simplifying so that we pare down to the essentials, to that which matters. There we have some practice doing that already, and this is done from the inside out, not from a mandatory place. So, it's the inside out of what is important to me and where am I gonna invest my time. Now, what's interesting for me about this curiosity that I'm currently having is that I am undergoing a transformation. And I'm often undergoing one. I think I've probably gone through 3 or 4 major ones in the last 2 years. I am in the process of going through another one, and part of what I'm doing is going through the house, my house, and releasing everything that isn't essential. And I didn't read that in a book, and somebody didn't tell me to do that. Innately, I woke up one morning and I said, now it's time to get rid of, to release a whole bunch of layers so someone else can enjoy what I once enjoyed. And so that I have more freedom of spaciousness in my life. And so to go through my home and to take things, every single thing I have in my home, I love or I don't have it. I stopped a long time ago having things in my house that were just okay. I a long time ago, I gave up clothing I that was that I also thought was just okay and said, "Why don't I just have things I love?" And so I tend to be surrounded with what I love, and it's interesting to gift, to give away, to pack up, to release things I love. So I am experiencing that level of shedding as I'm doing this reading and so forth. So my friends, there's a lot more I can say, but I'm not going to. And what we are going to do is a meditation again of love. It all comes down to love. It all comes down to the only thing we take with us when we leave this planet is love. And so the question that we ask each day is not only what is essential, but we're asking the question, did I love more today? Has my love quotient expanded? And if it hasn't, one of the questions can be forgiveness. Do I need to forgive? Do I need to have a crucial conversation with someone? What do I need to do to clean me up so that more love can flow through me? So let's close our eyes. And as I breathe into this space that I share with you, and I feel your energy in this field, I'm very grateful that you're here. And so I'm doing two things. I'm opening my crown chakra, the top of my head, and I'm inviting the light of God that is always flowing just to fill me up. And I've opened my heart and I'm feeling into the field that you and I share. And so I'm awake and aware to your presence in relationship with God presence, with divine presence. And so I invite you as we meditate to be sure that you breathe. Breathing is such an important part of meditation. Feel your feet firmly planted on the ground. And allow yourself to feel the energy in your field. So I've got my crown chakra wide open, my heart chakra wide open, my feet on the ground, and I'm feeling into the energy around me, into my field. And I'm just going to sit in this space and breathe. And so your attention is not going on your breath. Your attention is going on the field that's around you, the place where your skin meets the invisible. And move your shoulders around a bit, your neck. Hmm. Come back to this present moment and feel your field. And with your heart open, feel the energy from your heart filling up the energy all around your body temple. And any emotion that you've had recently that has been less than high vibrating, I invite you to access that in your field and to simply just sit and love it. And I like to choose different times in my life, like from the time I'm an infant to the time I'm a teenager. Just choose different times in my life and see myself at that age and just hold that hologram from my mind in love. And now let's all hold a picture or a symbol of Spokane or wherever you live in the field. I like to see the river, the watchtower, or a tree. And I just let it sit there as my heart is open wide and my field is so full. And the energy says enough. I don't need to say more. Oh, now I'm going to bring in my neighbors from my neighborhood. And now let's see a picture of ourselves today at this very moment, the now moment self. And just hold ourselves energetically in this field of love. And so, from this place of a full heart, a warm heart, a big heart, we enter into prayer together. Divine love, divine love, divine love. There's but one life, and that is the life of God, and that is the life of divine love. In the beginning was divine love. In the beginning was love, so divine that it was undifferentiated. It was pure love, real love, true love. And out of this love came the words, "Let there be." And there was. And everything took form from this love, including you and including me. And so when we get quiet and we allow ourselves to feel the love within us and connect to and open our soul, we have that experience of remembering that divine love. And from this place, we speak words on behalf of ourselves, of our country, of our world, that right where we are, God the good is, that right where we are. And it is from this place that we make choice and we take action. And so I speak my word right here and right now that the choices are visible to us. That when we come to a place in our life where we feel an internal angst, there's the choice to blame or to become small, or there's a place to bless and to expand in love. And so it's my prayer that you and I have the maturity and the ability to see the choices in front of us. And it is from this plethora of choices that we say yes to that which feels vibrationally the highest, that is calling us from within to without, in order to mature and become that greater light that we are on this earth plane. And I speak from this place that all of our needs are met. All of our needs are met, whether they are financial or intellectual, whether they are communal or relational, whether they are expressive or desirous of rest. Whatever our needs are, that there is sufficiency in our response, in our choice, in our yes. And so I give thanks for this. I give thanks for the goodness and glory of God, and I give thanks for our ability to see it, to know it, and to choose from it. And it's from this place that I call forth grace, that I call forth forgiveness, that I call forth the ability to expand into more and more and more love. And we don't expand into love from love. We expand into love because we are given the opportunity to love. And so I say yes to those opportunities. I say yes to the opportunity to love myself with such grace that I hold myself in high esteem and high consciousness and high regard. And as I do for myself, I do so for each and every person who's listening to this YouTube. And I do so for everyone that I meet in person, live in the flesh. That there is an awareness of the soul meeting the soul, meeting the soul, meeting the soul. And I just give thanks for this time here on earth and for this opportunity to play in physical form. I give thanks for the beauty that meets me every single day. And I just give thanks for awareness and joy. And I speak my word that joy may multiply. I tell you, we can change our country and our world through accessing the tone of joy. And so for this and for so much more, I do give thanks. For everyone who's listening to the sound of my voice, I speak words of wholeness and healing. I speak words of abundance and prosperity. I speak words of connectedness and relationship and friendship and love. And I speak words of remembering the feeling tone of your own unique soul as it is connected with the one and only thing that is God. And so from this place, I do give thanks. And I say, and you're invited to say along with me, and so it is. Amen. All right, my dear friends, I love you. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. And the next couple weeks, I'm going to do pre-records as I have appointments. And if you are in Washington State and happen to be on Vashon Island on the 27th of July, that's a Sunday, I'll be speaking at Burton Community Church at 11 a.m. Pacific time. And I do believe that they have online streaming if you would like to watch as well. All right. Blessings and have a terrific week.